Hi, my name is Petran, and I'm an animation student based in Indonesia, and I'm currently in my second semester. In this video, I'm going to be taking you guys along the process on how I made these 3 animated pieces using Blender. Disclaimer, this is not a tutorial. Like I said, I'm just going to be explaining and showing you guys on how I made these animations, because to be honest, I still consider myself as a beginner user when it comes to learning Blender. But I've learned a lot since I've made these animations, so I'm excited to show you guys how I did it. And so without further ado, let's get right into it. To be completely honest, I have used Blender and maybe even had some experience in using 3D before this project. And I've actually used Blender to make my background references for my final project, The Balancing Act, back when I was in high school. And you can check that animated short here in this channel. But back then I was just using models straight out from the internet, and I didn't necessarily have to make everything from scratch, so that's gonna be a challenge for me. But what inspired me to do this project in the first place was that 1, I'm currently learning 3D modeling and animation in my animation program, specifically in Maya. And 2, I've been seeing a ton of these 2D/3D hybrid animations in my For You page and my Instagram. I've always wanted to incorporate 3D elements into my 2D projects and vice versa. And honestly, I've been inspired by a lot of old retro PS1 graphic style low poly video game animations, especially from the horror community, like Puppet, like Puppet Combo, Fears to Fathom, maybe even GTA or Animal Crossing. And so the first piece I wanted to make was a bathroom style environment with a character sitting on the toilet playing with his phone. And I plan to incorporate a lot of cool colors, flickering lights, and give off somewhat of a liminal and depressing vibe. So first I started with this hollow room, and I actually already made the toilet in advance because I was just experimenting. I needed a good vision to start with. And so as you can see, I already made the tiles, and then I made these shelves for shampoos, body soaps, and other bathroom essentials. And I made this model of a person to have a size comparison between the objects of the scene. And now I'm just modeling all the other bathroom essentials. Right now I'm just modeling a contact solution bottle. I don't know why. Maybe because I wear contacts. And now I'm also modeling a bottle dispenser for shampoo, I think. And then I modeled a lot of other things like a facial wash container. I also modeled this body scrub brush that didn't even end up making it into the final scene. Also this razor that also didn't end up in the final scene. So rest in peace. Just bear with me at this point with my modeling skills. I just started learning how to model, so it's kind of janky. Skills are kind of janky. And so now I'm modeling this toilet paper as well as its handle. And again, I was just going for that low poly style so that I don't stress myself out. And looking back all of this footage of me modeling, it feels kind of cringy to me. But you know what? You live and you learn, and this is just me learning. And now I'm modeling another shelf for more bathroom essentials, and like for example this, I'm just stacking some toilet papers, and then I made a drain for the sink, which in hindsight was not even necessary for the final scene, was not even visible in the scene, so I did that for nothing. And then I did some UV mapping, which it was pretty fun. I had really fun texturing my models. I made some bootleg parody versions of certain brands. Let me know if you can guess any of them. I made all of them in Canva. And now I'm just putting them into the scene, putting all my textured objects into the scene. Then I changed some of the material attributes for certain objects to make them more like metal
and the modeling is done. Now it's time to pull out a key tool that I used to make this scene 2.5 dimensional, and that is none other than grease pencil. I've always wanted to try grease pencil because I've been seeing a lot of grease pencil animations in my For You page, but I never really had the courage nor the motivation to even tackle it myself. And I was also always been intimidated by it. I mean, I was intimidated by Blender as a whole, but grease pencil was no different. Because coming from a 2D artist myself, I thought the features on grease pencil were very intriguing for me to try out. And I thought this was a game changer for 3D art and 2D art in general. But once I actually tried it, it was actually not as bad as I thought. In fact, personally, I thought it was one of the easiest tasks that I had to do throughout this project. And it felt like using any other 2D animation software. Per usual, when I 2D animate, I start off with a sketch layer. After I'm happy with that, I line my animation to make it more crisp and clean. And then I just block out the colors using the paint bucket tool. And then I added some blush to the cheeks and added some shading to the character. And once I'm done with animating, I played around with a lot of the effects and modifiers, specifically with the noise modifier, and I also really like the pixelated effect. I feel like the more I experiment, the more I really found my specific liking to a style that I was going for in this scene. And I also added some rim lighting and some drop shadow to the character just to like seal it all together and give that extra pizzazz to the character. I also added that flickering light that I mentioned earlier and a subtle camera movement. I went for a low to the ground camera angle. I thought the perspective was pretty interesting in this angle, and so why not give it a try? I also forgot to mention that I tested out 2 different lighting scenarios. Like I said, I wanted a more of a depressing mood and like a dim lighting, but I did try out a sunlight natural lighting type scenario. My idea was to have the natural sunlight coming from the bathroom window because I was just experimenting at that point and I loved playing with lighting. And now here's the preview of my compositor editor. I used a lot of glare, bloom effects, and a lot of noise and sharpen filters to actually make it a little bit more VHS/analog style, and also mask out the imperfections that I have in the scene overall. And here's the shader editor. I was honestly just playing around with a lot of the nodes and textures in the node editor, especially for the bathroom tiles. I kind of wanted to make it a little bit kind of painterly, I guess. I specifically played around with the Gabor texture. I also imported my own paint texture from Procreate. Basically what I did was just painted a few brushstrokes and I just exported the texture to Blender and I played around with the Gabor texture from there. And again, the nodes were actually not all bad. Like honestly at that point I was just playing around and experimenting with different things here and there. So once you truly get it and understand it and watch a few tutorials about it, it's not as bad as you thought. Maybe for me personally, but it's not that bad. And here's a behind the scenes of the full animation. As you can see, the character's kind of distorted, and that's just how it is. And here is the final animation. This second piece, I was going more for a sunrise, warm kitchen aesthetic with a little cat character. And I wanted to have more interesting lighting and more dynamic camera movements compared to the first piece. I was kind of nervous because I was afraid that the camera movements will affect the grease pencil animation. Maybe a few of the lines were kind of a little out of place when I moved the camera around. But in the end, I just kind of masked it out with the compositing. So just like last time, I started with the modeling To be honest, I forgot to record the first portion of the modeling process, so my bad on that. And right now I'm just playing around with the compositor. I'm playing around with the lighting, the colors, experimenting with the compositor nodes, and I'm editing the sky to give off that correct sunrise lighting that I was going for. And I continued modeling the rest of the objects in the scene, like this tea kettle, for example, and also changing the materials. It's pretty much the same deal, the same process, the same workflow, and I'm just changing this color of the clock here. Speaking of clock and time, there was a time where I forgot to stop the recording, so I was recording for 2+ hours. Also my bad on that. And so now I'm just modeling this plant. I looked up several tutorials on how to make a plant on YouTube, and they have saved me. And so right now I'm just modeling the leaf, and I'm UV mapping the leaf to have a texture, leaf texture, and I used the particle system to actually make the leaves in the stem. Now I'm just putting the clay texture and the soil texture in the model, and I put the plant right beside this window, and I also modeled another plant there, putting the logo in the dish soap. And then I designed a calendar in Canva, and I made it low res in Photoshop, and I just put it in the scene. I put a few trees to, have some nature outside, and I also made like a land of nature and a few other trees and some electric poles to give it more life outside of the window from the camera. And now I'm just blocking out the animation using this cube to know where the cat is going to be positioned, and also animating the camera. Then I roughly animated the cat so that I can test out if it'll work with the dynamic camera movement. Once I figured it out, I made it more cleaner, did some in-betweening, but the animation was still pretty rough at this point. I cleaned it up with some line art, and this is when the problem occurred. So I was just in the middle of cleaning up the line art, cleaning up the animation, and all of a sudden when I tried playing the animation, some of the lines got separated. I don't know how this happened, and so I was a little bit confused and kind of pissed on how this disrupted my workflow. I tried redrawing the lines and they still got separated. Unfortunately, by the end I just undoed everything and I just reshaped it using the edit mode, and it eventually worked. But if anyone knows how to properly fix this problem, please let me know. And then I just added some color to the eyes and added some shading, and here's the final colored animation. And then same like last time, I played around with the effects, making the cat a little bit more pixelated, and added some rim light and more shadows, and here's the final animation. This one took a little bit more quicker than the last one. It took me around like 4 days to finish, and so I'm very proud of it. And for the third and final piece that I wanted to make was more of an Indonesian-esque gas station, nighttime, smoking a cigarette, out in the rain, chill vibes. Now for this animation, thankfully I didn't have to model a lot of things. I mainly only had to model a car, the gas station, and that's kind of it. I mainly used a lot of just cubes and simple shapes besides the car. But for this project, mainly I had to do a lot of custom texturing, and the card was the hardest model to texture because I was just bad at modeling and I didn't have a good baseline for the textures. But the texturing went fine with the other models, and right now I'm just adding some lighting, and I really played around with the bloom effect. I didn't have to edit the sky here because it was nighttime. So I was also playing around with the colors, trying to make it a little bit more green tone. And then I added this Kopi Kenangan logo, pretty well-known coffee shop here in Indonesia. And now I wanted to do something different here. I wanted to add rain. And so firstly, I try to edit the ground and make it puddly. And I want to thank these YouTube tutorials for helping me out in this process. Really taught me a lot about shaders. And yeah, this is how it looks so far. Really liking it so far. And then I added the actual rain animation, and this was also really cool and fun to do. And also I want to thank these YouTube tutorials for helping me out in this process as well. And I also added this splash effect to the ground, and I think it looks so cool. I added the dynamic paint modifier to the ground that I added collision to for the rain, and again, I think it looks so cool so far. And for the animation, it's basically the same process as the other two projects: sketching it, lining it, coloring it. I also added this smoke animation in the cigarette and when he blows on the cigarette. And I also added rim lighting, shadows, the pixel effect, all that jazz. I also added a reflection of the character by just duplicating it and mirroring it in the ground, but I forgot to show it, and so here's it in the final animation. And I really like it. I think this is the best one, in my opinion, out of the three. And so there we go.
And that's pretty much it for my process. I've definitely learned a lot these past few months making this project, and I was busy with a ton of college work, which is why it took me quite the while to make these projects. But I've learned a lot about the overall Blender interface. I learned a lot about Grease Pencil, the nodes, shaders. Hopefully you've also learned something from this video, or at least feel inspired to try out Blender for yourself, especially if it's been on your mind for a while and you've been eager to try it out but never had the motivation to do it, like me. But once you actually try it out, it's not as complicated as you think it is. Yes, there will be some bumps here and there, but hey, that's a part of the journey, and you'll learn from your mistakes. If you're afraid to make mistakes and fail, then you'll never learn. Life can't always be smooth sailing. And from now on, I'm inspired to make more projects like this moving on and doing more hybrid 2D/3D animations. If you want to stay updated, you can follow my Instagram and see all of my uploaded pieces from there. And let me know if you like this video and if you want to see more process videos like this. And so yeah, that's the end of this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and thank you for watching. Bye.